In this video, let's try to focus on various key terms in direct filling gold, in the topic direct filling gold. So we'll discuss the following key terms in brief, right? Starting with annealing. So annealing is a process of heat treatment. It's a process of gradual heating and cooling of a metal in order to obtain certain desired properties, which include improving the machinability, improving the dimensions of that particular metal, improving and increasing the plastic deformation potential, and also stabilizing the shape of that particular metal, and various other beneficial properties can be achieved by this process called as annealing. So it's a kind of heat treatment where there is gradual heating and cooling of a metal in order to obtain the before mentioned properties, right? So along with that, we have various other key terms in direct filling gold, especially with respect to the purity or presence of impurities on the surface of gold. If at all gold is coated with some adsorbent such as ammonia to make it non-cohesive, then we term it as non-cohesive gold. If at all the gold has no impurities, no surface impurities, then it has that cohesiveness, then we call that as a cohesive gold, right? So that's the context where we come across the term cohesive. So cohesive or cohesiveness or cohesive forces are those forces which act between atoms or molecules that are present in a single phase, whereas adhesive or adhesion is nothing but forces present between different molecules present in different phases, right? So that's the basic difference between cohesiveness and adhesiveness, right? And cold welding. Cold welding is the unique feature of gold is that when restoring gold in a cavity, we can weld different layers of gold at room temperature. Usually whenever we come across the term welding, often we tend to fuse two metals. Often there is fusion of two metals or two components using either heat or pressure, right? Whereas cold welding, as the name itself indicates, it is done at room temperature, hence it's called as cold welding, and it's nothing but process of plastic deformation of a metal which is accompanied by strain hardening. So that's the exact meaning of cold welding, right? So since it is done at room temperature, this is called as cold welding, and this is possible because of this metallic bond that's existing between different atoms. And this cold welding, during the process, when the particles are intimately welded, what happens is there is increase in the metallic bonding between these, thereby leading to increased adhesion or increased cohesion for that matter between different layers of gold, right? And coming to compaction. Compaction, as you all know, it's nothing but condensing using compressive forces. So here in gold we have different forms of gold available: gold foil, pellets, powder particles, right? So different components, no matter what they are, when they are placed in cavity, they need to be compacted using compressive force, and this process leads to cold welding followed by strain hardening. We'll discuss what strain hardening is subsequently. And then we have degassing. Degassing, as the name itself indicates, removing gases from a surface. As I mentioned before, in cohesive form of gold and non-cohesive form, the manufacturer places a layer of ammonia gas on the surface of gold to prevent contamination, right? So that different layers of gold don't fuse together, right? So that's done by intention. So this ammonia gas gets adsorbed, right? In similar way, various other gases can also get adsorbed unintentionally on surface of gold, right? So just before using gold is heated, and this heating process is done in order to eliminate these gases that have been adsorbed on surface of gold, right? So degassing in this context means that way. And coming to desorption. So desorption is nothing but removing of particles or removing of substances or impurities that are attached to the surface of a material either by physical or chemical forces. That is desorption. It's opposite to that of adsorption, right? And ductile. So gold has this unique property that it is very much ductile, right? So ductility is nothing but ability to elongate any metal or any material without fracture, right? So that's called as ductility. Whereas malleability is nothing but ability to compress a metal or a material in form of thin sheets. To put it simple, ductility is ability to draw a metal into wires, whereas malleability is ability to make it into sheets, right? So gold is ductile as well as malleable. And coming to metallic bond, as I mentioned, metallic bond is nothing but primary interatomic force of attraction between atoms, which is possible when they are too close together, so that the valence electrons present within those atoms interact, thereby leading to formation of this metallic bond. And this metallic bond is possible only once there is proper compaction, right? Only then we can intimately fuse different particles of gold, isn't it? And then we have non-cohesive, the opposite of cohesive, and welding. So as I mentioned, cold welding done at room temperature, whereas normal welding process is where, as you all know, fusion of metal components using a third filler, with or without a third filler, in order to obtain a fusion between interface of different components by using either heat or pressure as agents, right? So that's welding. And coming to work hardening, this is very important. Work hardening, also called as strain hardening. Once cold welding is done, what happens is dislocations are being formed in metal as given in Phillips. Because of these dislocations, it leads to a strain hardening or work hardening, where there is increase in strength, increase in toughness of a given metal, along with decrease in percentile elongation or ductility, right? So the desirable properties such as increase in hardness and strength and decrease in ductility are seen because of this work hardening or strain hardening. And this strain hardening or work hardening mechanism is seen once cold welding or cold working is done. So once there is cold welding, because of, as I mentioned, in Phillips it's mentioned like there are certain dislocations being created in the metal because of cold welding. And I also mentioned that it's beyond the purview of this book to explain the mechanism, and they have left that there itself. So you need not really go deeper. So you just understand the fact that once there is cold welding, it is usually accompanied by strain hardening or work hardening, where there is alteration in certain properties of metal, as I mentioned before, right? So these are some of the key terms which I wanted to discuss, and I hope it's clear, right? Thank you.